Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday. We have two great guests this evening. We have Representative Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, and Attorney Extraordinaire John Yoo. But before we go there, Democrat Party has really revealed itself, hasn't it? It supports every inch of the bureaucracy and every penny of fraud, waste, and abuse. That's their position. They've contributed nothing to this debate. They propose nothing to be cut. They are not doing anything in a bipartisan fashion. They're singing songs, union songs from the 1930s. They're showing up at bureaucratic facilities, acting like a bunch of drug-addled homeless people. I don't know. I guess they think that works. But here's the truth. The truth is, for them, it's not waste, fraud, and abuse. I want you to listen very carefully to me. It's not the administrative state. It's not the swamp. Listen, for them, this is a government within a government. They've created this edifice, this subterranean government within a government, and they intend to defend it. This money that's being spent that we see as waste, fraud, and abuse, they see as a lifeline to their ideology, to their power. And they've spent 80 years building it, and they have no intention of giving it up easily, and neither do their media or the rest of their surrogates. It is a subterranean government within a government. It's even below the massive bureaucracy, and it works in secret, and it's immune, and they've created their own laws to protect it and to promulgate it, and they have their favorite judges who are there to protect it and defend it. There was a great French politician and philosopher. His name was Frédéric Bastiat. I want you to listen to this one sentence. Listen. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, this is the ruling class in Washington, D.C. Over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. You know, you watch liberals on cable and elsewhere, they say, look at Donald Trump. He wants to cut this food program, that food program. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the first tier of the bureaucracy. Donald Trump's not cutting that. He's cutting that secret tier, the government within the government. They keep flashing around the other tier. No. It's the government within the government. That's what we're talking about, the subterranean government. Here we have a GAO report, the Government Accountability Office. Stay with me on this. This came out just a few months ago. And they put out this report. And Congress had it, and the president had it, and the media had it, and most of you never heard about it. Listen to this. Fraud Risk Management, 2018 to 2022, that period of time. The data show federal government loses an estimated $233 billion to $521 billion every single year. That's $250 billion to $500 billion every single year, they say, to fraud based on various risk environments. Listen to me. We've got to get our calculus right, our brains right on this. For the Democrats and the left, for the self-perpetuating bureaucracy, this isn't fraud. This isn't waste and it's abuse. It's routine. This is how they want to operate. This is their money. And by the way, to push their ideological agenda. That's what it's for. So for them, it's not fraud, waste, and abuse. For them, it's a lifeline. But $250 billion to $500 billion in this secret government activity. Here, the Daily Caller from this past September. If current trends persist, this is past September, the Biden-Harris administration will have made over $1 trillion in improper payments by the time Biden leaves office, according to a report released by Open the Books. An improper payment is a disbursement made by the government to the wrong person, in the wrong amount, or for the wrong reason, per federal guidelines. The Biden-Harris administration between 2021 and 2023 oversaw over $800 billion, nearly $1 trillion in such payments, after adjusting for inflation, according to the Open the Books organization. But again, they don't care. This is an immune government within a government that has hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars over time to lord over you, to control you, to push their wokeism, to push their ideology, to affect foreign policy. They're everywhere. They're ubiquitous. And now Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and his crew, they have found it. They have found it. They have uncovered it, whether it's at USAID or any of these other departments, whether it's at Treasury, whether it's at the Social Security Administration. It is massive. It's under the radar. This is why there aren't hearings. This is why GAO puts out these reports and nobody cares. This is why an organization says, wait a minute, they're wasting $1 trillion. It's not waste to them. It's necessary to them. Look at this. Elon Musk and the crew. In 2 weeks' time, $50 to $100 billion, reports Rick Manning on Town Hall, each year. That is how much has already been identified by the White House's Department of Government Efficiency through a review of Treasury payments as likely fraud. This amount is nothing more than identifying how much is paid monthly to recipients who don't have a Social Security number or other government identification attached to their files. Doge head Elon Musk has already estimated, based upon work done to date, there's approximately $1 trillion in fraud, waste, and abuse, just like that watchdog group, in the system that can be identified and prevented. It took 2 weeks of analyzing government payment systems to make this incredible pronouncement. All right, let's talk about the Constitution, because we're told that those who are digging into this, finding out what's taking place, banging the pots and pans, trying to address it, trying to cut the waste, fraud, and abuse, they've created a constitutional crisis, don't you know? Article 1 is Congress. Article 2 is the president and the executive. Article 3 is the judiciary, which only creates the Supreme Court. Congress creates the rest of the courts with a signature by the president. The massive bureaucracy, I dare you to find it in our Constitution. It doesn't exist. The fourth branch of government. Not a single one of these cabinet departments, not a single federal employee, none of it. It's all a creation of Congress. Judicial review. Look at these courts. They're all over the place. Where is that in the Constitution? Nowhere. There's no judicial review for federal district courts. There's no federal district courts. Well, where did we get judicial review from? It's an implied power. Somebody's got to make decisions. So it was decided by the Supreme Court that the Supreme Court will make those decisions in a case called Marbury versus Madison. So in all of this, in the Constitution, we have Congress and we have a president. The president's in charge of the executive branch. Or is he? Congress appropriates funds, but that power has limits. You wouldn't believe it if you listen to the propaganda. Yeah, there are certain limits on Congress's power to appropriate. The judiciary. Does the judiciary have the power to run the federal government, the various agencies, HR, and all the rest? No, it does not. It's called separation of powers. Congress has a lane. The judiciary has a lane. The executive has a lane. The executive branch. Who is the executive branch? What is it? It's the President of the United States. He and his vice president. They're the only people elected by the entire body politic through the Electoral College. Judges are unelected. Members of Congress from their districts or from their states. He's it. And they said, you know what? This executive branch belongs to the President of the United States. Really? Well, we're being told today that he can't act without congressional approval. He can't act without the courts giving their approval. Wait a minute. I thought we had separation of powers. Wait a minute. Where did this bureaucracy come from? Doesn't the president, as the chief executive, have some power over personnel? Doesn't he have the power to offer severance? Doesn't he have a power to look at data in a department? Doesn't he have the power to conduct audits, to conduct reviews? Doesn't he have the power to set policy with respect to the executive branch? No. According to the Democrats, according to these activist judges, these left-wing judges, no, he doesn't have any power. He just has to sit and watch. Except if he wants to expand the power of the bureaucracy, if he wants to increase spending, whether the courts say yes or no, whether Congress says yes or no, it doesn't matter. We have to continue to fund what? The subterranean government. And we have to continue to subsidize what? Democrat Party constituency groups, their ideologies, their front organizations. There, the president has no limitations. How do we know? Because Joe Biden violated at least 3 Supreme Court decisions. Even when it came to student loan forgiveness, that wasn't a constitutional crisis, now was it, ladies and gentlemen? No, no, no. When he violated immigration laws left and right to open our borders, that wasn't a constitutional crisis, was it, ladies and gentlemen? No, no, no. When he ordered big corporations to insist that their employees have vaccinations using some obscure OSHA regulation, and the Supreme Court said you couldn't do that, but he did it anyway. That wasn't a violation of the Constitution, was it, ladies and gentlemen? When the Democrats attacked the Electoral College, when they attacked the independence of the Supreme Court, when they want to expand the numbers of justices and pack it with a Politburo of self-identified ideologues, that's not a constitutional crisis, is it, America? No, it's not. When they want to count votes when elections are over, that's not a constitutional crisis, is it, America? When they want to fundamentally transform America, which the Constitution prevents, that's not a problem. When they push CRT, the 1619 Project, that have as its core the statement, the position, that the Constitution's illegitimate, it's too old, that it was written by a bunch of white slave owners, that it needs to be thrown out. Yeah, we have this. Democrats want Constitution completely rewritten. Story after story, Democrats are waging war against the Constitution. Now, they wave it around. Donald Trump's violating the Constitution. No, he's not violating a damn thing. The courts are out of control. Congress is out of control. The bureaucracy's out of control. He's trying to bring it back to center. And that's why he was elected to do it. Look at these judges. Wow. I want you to remember, the judges, we hold them on high. Like they're superhuman. Really. Some of the worst human rights violations and crises occurred in this country as a result of our courts. Perhaps you've heard of the Dred Scott decision that was issued in 1857, where black people, even if they're freed, could never be free citizens in the United States. That's what the court said. Now, you have to abide by that decision, don't you? No. We had a Civil War that said we're not buying that decision. Abraham Lincoln said, I'm not buying that decision. Should we have adhered to that decision, ladies and gentlemen? Then we had another decision at the end of the 1800s. Here we had the Civil War. We had all these events taking place. Plessy versus Ferguson. What was that all about? Simply, separate but equal is equal, meaning blacks are not equal. Should we be abiding by that decision, ladies and gentlemen? It took more than half a century for Brown versus Board of Education to reverse that, the court to reverse itself. Was that okay? No, it wasn't okay. How about the Korematsu decision? During World War II, the big FDR court, the progressive court, when they rounded up 120,000 Japanese Americans and Americans of Japanese descent and sent them to concentration camps and stole their property. Was that a court decision? Yes. Was that a good one? I don't think so. You mean the courts can be wrong? Yes, they can be wrong. Yes. Flesh and blood, these judges. And if you have radical judges appointed by Biden and Clinton and Obama, or Trump-hating judges, some of them Republicans, some of them in Seattle or Washington, D.C., they can be driven by doctrines, by ideologies, by politics that they're not supposed to be driven by. So far, they found that the CDC had to add language back to its website. Where does a judge get the power to do that? Prevented access to Treasury Department data, thwarting audits. Where does a judge get that power? That's the executive branch. I thought we had separation of powers here. Held up severance for employees, but then backed off, said, well, maybe you can do that. Well, that's nice, Judge. What else did they do? Well, 60 days, Trump wants to freeze spending that Biden was pushing out the door for radical groups and programs and so forth. Well, he can't do that. Why can't he? Because I said so. I'm a judge. Thwarted withholding of funds for foreign subsidies. This just happened the other day. Why? Where does he get the authority to do that? He has no authority to do that. Prevented an order from the Trump administration that says biological males, transitioning or not, are going to be in prison with biological males. We have a judge in Washington, D.C., an old Reagan judge, who said, wait, that's a constitutional issue. No, it's not. Then we had another judge that said an order that said that this administration is not going to spend money to support operations, medical changes for the genitalia of children. Judge said, you can't do that. So who's running the executive branch? Congress? The courts? The president's not allowed to run the executive branch? Or he's a dictator and there's a constitutional crisis? Really? So HR, data processing, the federal prisons, and decisions about who can and cannot get funds for sex changes, that's not the president's business. And they call that a constitutional crisis. I want to tell you constitutional crisis. Sanctuary cities. What are sanctuary cities? Sanctuary cities are a throwback to the Confederacy. What do you mean, Mark? You see, the Civil War began in part through states nullifying federal law. What's a sanctuary city? It's a city and a state doing what? Nullifying federal law. That's what they're doing. So our too old, too white Constitution needs to be thrown out, except when it's used to try and thwart Trump, who's now going after this subterranean government. See, he's supposed to be the head of the ruling class. He's supposed to support the ruling class. He's supposed to allow all this waste and fraud and abuse to take place. But he says no. Finally, what's an appropriation? We keep hearing Congress appropriates. So if Congress appropriates money for fraud, waste, and abuse, is a president required to spend it? Or if Congress appropriates money in such a nebulous and ambiguous way that the unelected bureaucracy, which is now housed under the President of the United States, he's the head of the executive, these are bureaucrats and bureaucracies, where he says, no, I need to dig into this, find out how much there is, and put an end to it. He's not allowed to do that? You know, we call this in legal terms BS. That's what it is. Not all funds appropriated by Congress are constitutional. It creates this bureaucracy. How is that constitutional? The court said it's constitutional. That doesn't make it constitutional, does it? Well, judicial review. Well, where'd they get judicial review? They claimed it for itself. You see, I'm actually going back to the Constitution, not Supreme Court decisions of old or more recent vintage. No. So Congress doesn't have a free check. The courts don't have a free check. But they've created this massive bureaucracy, and they've put it in the executive branch. Our biggest legislature is in the executive branch. What happened to separation of powers? And the only one who apparently is not allowed to control it, to oversee it, is the President of the United States. The only official who's elected by all the people of the United States is the one who's not allowed to look at it, let alone control it. He's not allowed to reduce the number of employees, let alone oversee them. He's not allowed to make policy decisions about all the things that are under him. A GS-13 bureaucrat can, an inspector general can, of course. A cabinet secretary, not so much, especially if they're appointed by Trump, but everybody else has a say except him. Now, that would be a real constitutional crisis, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. So this government within a government is doing everything it can to defend itself. It's spending trillions of dollars without your knowledge. And Donald Trump and Elon Musk and his crew are revealing it, and they're trying to do something about it. They deserve our 100% support because this has never been done before. Not since Woodrow Wilson and the early progressives, a.k.a. American Marxists, through Franklin Roosevelt, through Lyndon Johnson, through Obama, Clinton, Biden, and up to this day. They've gotten away with it. They've gotten away with it. But it's a new day. There's a new sheriff and a deputy sheriff. They may be public enemy number one and number two to the entrenched ruling class, but not to us. They're heroes. I'll be right back.